If we can get everybody to come in and get seated, we'll get started with our collaborative meeting today. So as we get started, I'd like to take just a moment and thank the many partners that made this possible today. They're listed on the bottom of the agenda. There's agendas out as you come in, and then also on the corner of the tables. And so the partners that made this possible: Emery County, Carbon County, the Utah Office of Energy Development. A huge shout out and thank you to the Southeastern Regional Development Agency for this great facility and helping us accommodate everything we need on this. And then of course the Division of Oil, Gas and Mining. I'm Bart Kettle, I'm Deputy Director with the Division of Oil, Gas and Mining. And I'm not actually supposed to be standing up here today. Travis Gray is the one who put all the muscle behind getting this initiated and getting this going. Unfortunately, he's sick, he got sick yesterday. So you're stuck with the second string, kind of slide in, hopefully we get by. But I would like to take just a second and thank Travis for the work he's done. In the Department of Natural Resources, we have 5 core values that we're striving to kind of live to every day as our employees. And Travis just really epitomized 2 of those core values in putting this together. One of them's own it and solve it, and he just took ownership of this and got it organized and got it going. And then the other one's be accountable. He's just accountable through every step. So it's kind of really unfortunate that Travis got sick and couldn't be here when he put so much work into this. So if we could just start out from the audience, just give Travis a quick applause. I hope he's watching. So because of the change for me moderating, I was second in the agenda. I'm just going to cover the purpose of the collaborative as we get started today, and then we'll segue into Jade Powell. A collaborative meeting, this is something that we've done in the Uinta Basin and Duchesne for actually well over a decade. And we've seen a lot of really favorable results out of it. We had a collaborative here in Carbon and Emery County for a period of time. Kind of went away. We're trying to initiate it and kick it off again. And the collaborative is really, it's designed to improve communication between elected officials, government, science, and industry. And what we see is when you provide this forum for ideas and information to be shared, meaningful connections are made. And when those meaningful connections are made, we figure out ways to solve problems. It's always the people that solve the problems. And so as we walk into this collaborative, we want it to be a medium where we cover what you, as an audience, believe are meaningful subjects, things that you want to know about, an opportunity to talk and discuss them. But it's not necessarily in this collaborative where the solutions will be made. Hopefully this collaborative is where the connections will be made, and we can start to work on the strategy that then starts to solve some of these difficult subjects that we have. We're planning to have 3 collaboratives. There'll actually be 4 in this calendar year. We won't typically have one in January. We're just trying to get this one kicked off. So there'll be one in May, one in August, and then another one in December. And if you can make sure you sign up, if you're on the emailing list, we'll make sure that you get noticed ahead of time as soon as the agenda comes out. For the upcoming May collaborative, we're hoping to cover a legislative update, some additional information on the San Rafael Research Center from Dr. Fry, and then also cover Class 6 geologic carbon sequestration, kind of an exciting project that we think probably has some significant meaning to this community here in southeastern Utah. And then for all of you, the way that you support this meeting, obviously turnout's key. The other thing is your input and suggestions, what topics are important, which ones we need to cover. Those are the things that really help us as we move forward with the meeting. So moving along, I would like to take just a moment and alert everybody. We've got, with the Division of Oil, Gas and Mining, we had a new director of the division start Monday. His name is Mick Thomas. Mick will be filling in for the role that John Baza performed for 18 years. So I'm not sure if John's watching today. I hope he is. Thank you so much, John, for helping us over the 18 years. So much of what we are as a division ties back to John. This very collaborative does. So thank you, John. Mick comes to us from the Idaho Department of Lands, where he was the lead on the mining, navigable water, and oil and gas industry. Mick, prior to that, spent time in Hawaii overseeing the geothermal resource, so a diverse kind of energy and minerals background. And then he also had time in industry, in the oil and gas industries as a geologist. So we were hoping that Mick might be able to make it down, but this transition is starting Monday, and the weather, we just weren't quite able to pull that off, but we'll look forward to him being here in the near future. Another thing that I'd kind of like to give a huge thank out. Hopefully I don't miss people, but we have multiple kind of community leaders in place. Representative Watkins is here. I know I've seen Senator Hinkins there, Senator Hinkins walk in. Thank you so much for your support. Carbon County Commissioners, Commissioner Martinez. I know I've seen Emery County Commissioner Citrid, but I'm not quite sure where everybody sits. There we go, hiding in the hiding place. Commissioner Jensen and Commissioner Leonard, and I know they're both over in this part. So thank you so much for your support here today. And as I kind of start to segue into Jade Powell's talk, I want to cover one thing that I'm very passionate about. In our society, I believe there's many things that make us work, but there's three things that are so important, but they become so reliable, we just take them for granted. We don't pay attention to them. And I just want to cover those at a high level, because here in this community, I think we're actually very familiar with them. One of those things is obviously energy, power, the ability to move things, the ability to make things happen. One of them is our food supply. After all, we all like to eat. That's how we baited you to this collaborative, is with food. So, and then the third thing is the logistics to bring those two together. And those three ingredients have been so reliable for 2 generations now. My entire generation and the generation that precedes me, we've never known failure on them. If you think about it for a second, by raise of hands, who got 100% on every test they ever took? Nobody. And yet here we have these three things that are just batting 100% for decades. We've seen logistics get kind of close in the COVID-19 era in 2020, where for the first time in our lives, shelves got a little bare. We even ran out of toilet paper, but we never got to the point where we didn't have the basic necessities in place. And so that's really some of the reasons that we have a collaborative. We're tied in this community to many of the things I just spoke about: logistics, energy, food production, but not everybody is. And I think it's really important to cover that. So I'm going to shut up and go sit down. I'm going to turn the time over to Jade Powell. Jade is another one of those people that made this happen. He and Travis worked very hard to get this put together. Jade is the Deputy Director for CERTA. And so with that, I'll just be quiet and turn it over to Jade.
Thanks, Bart. Thanks for that introduction and welcoming us all here. So I just want to welcome all of you to our new facilities. Many of you, first, I'm Jade Powell. Like Bart has said, I'm the Deputy Director here. Not only did I help put this together, but it was our whole executive team, which is Jerry Gamber, our Executive Director, and many of our program managers that are here, and they're just committed to seeing Carbon and Emery County, and really southeastern Utah, Grand and San Juan County, be successful, have wins, and just have thriving communities. So I'm extremely grateful for them. Many of you might know us as the Southeastern Utah Association of Local Governments and the Southeastern Utah Economic Development District. I'm out of breath just saying those two names. And so when we were building this new facility, and this is one of the first big meetings that we held there, so thankful for you guys for coming out, we decided that we would rebrand to the Southeastern Regional Development Agency. It's something that our executive board and our program managers and our staff here really took the time to look at and sit down and decide what do we represent. And one of the things that, couple of the things that we really decided to focus on was regionalism, really focusing on what we do as a region, as well as development, whether that's from economic development, community development, or even social and human services development, you know, poverty programs, things like that we run out of our offices, and just really empowering everyone from cities, communities, to the individual. Bart has already mentioned kind of the why we're here, and I just want to drive home a couple more things about why we think that this collaborative is so important and paramount that we have these conversations. Southeastern Utah currently, Carbon and Emery counties, we're experiencing a shift in our local economy. You know, we have pending dates of our 2 power plants in Emery County. We have the Hunter Power Plant and the Huntington Power Plant, which to Pacific Corp's Integrated Resource Plan of 2023, they have the retirement of Huntington as soon as 2036, and the retirement, I wrote them down because I knew I was going to get this wrong. The Hunter is 2031, and the Huntington is 2032. And these were announced in the 2023 IRP. However, just 2 years before the 2023 IRP and the 2021 IRP, the 2 dates were as soon as 2036 for Huntington and 2042 for Hunter. And so you can see in just those 2 years with the advancement of technology and the change in our administration, the change in just everyone's directions, you can see how those dates keep getting sooner and sooner and sooner as we're also progressing on this end. And so I think it's paramount that we have these discussions to decide on what are we going to do in these two counties. You know, between the Hunter and Huntington power plants, there's approximately about 300 employees, but we've researched the data and we've done some analysis to see that even though when these 2 power plants are decommissioned and shut down, it can be 6 to 7-fold the effect. Hopefully we're learning from, and that's why we're having these meetings. That's why we're looking at different technologies, because we have the infrastructure, we have the industry, we have the workforce, we have the pride in being an energy producer. And so with all these assets, we can do something else when these power plants shut down, such as maybe it's advanced nuclear reactors, carbon sequestration, hydrogen, supercritical CO2. These are all technologies that Carbon and Emery counties are studying so that we can still be a main energy producer of the Intermountain West. With that, I just want to thank you again for coming and being a part of these critical conversations and being a part of the team that's going to make this successful and play a big role in this pivot that we're seeing. So thank you. I don't know who I'm supposed to turn it back over to.
So as we go through these, we kind of welcome questions if you have them from the speakers. We didn't tell the speakers that part before they agreed to come and speak today. But if you do have questions, please take a moment and ask questions. So if there is any questions for Jade, we'll take a moment. If there's not, we'll move on, but I'll pause just momentarily. And also, if you do have speakers, we have microphones. We'll try to run them around because we are on YouTube with this, so the audience that's out there virtually can also kind of hear what's going on. Okay, so our next presentation will be by Carbon County. And this presentation will be done by Shani Wilson, the Director of Economic Development and Tourism for Carbon County. Her biggest goal is to support industry and growth in the community. And prior to the current role, she was at USU Eastern for 23 years, deep roots here. One of her biggest accomplishments is her 2 kids. And she's an avid football fan. And speaking of an avid football fan, she'll be joined by Commissioner Martinez. And when I was looking through his introduction, I found a couple things interesting, so I'll get to all of it hopefully here. But he's been a Carbon County Commissioner for 5 years, has a strong commitment to this local community. Spent 29 years with BODEC in the oil, gas, and mining role, and 20 years as a high school official calling football games for state championships. It's interesting. I learned something from that. So if you come up, and I'll turn the time over to you.
need to be taller like you.
Here, I'll get down.
No, yeah, thank you so much for having us. I kind of feel like I taught college success courses at the college for many years, and like that, I kind of feel like this group came in and migrated to the back. So what I used to do the first day of class is I would make them all come to the front and sit right in the 2 or 3 front rows. They didn't particularly like that. But anyway, no, thanks so much for having us. We do have a presentation, and we'll... Do I need to do something?
Need a clicker up there, you can use to advance your slides.
Oh,
Is that the
oh.
clicker? Under that? Yeah, that guy.
Hold on.
Just click that. You're there. Awesome.
So I want to apologize for those of you who have heard me speak in the last several months, because you're going to hear essentially the same thing. But again, thanks so much for being here. I thought we'd start off by a little narrative, and I will say that not too long ago, Jones and DeMille did a lot of research and put a lot of information together concerning Ridge Road, and so I stole a little bit of their verbiage in case they're here and wondering, well, wait a minute, that sounds familiar, as I was putting this together. But for many years, energy production throughout Carbon County has been a primary focus and economic driver for the area. But unfortunately, in recent years, energy depletion trends and government policies have resulted in jobs being lost with the closure of coal mines and power plants. So, yes. Oh, okay. All right.
Is that better?
I can actually talk really loud. I usually don't need a mic, just so you know. Okay. Thank you. So, like Jade had mentioned, there are some challenges, and these are things that we're aware of, we've been aware of for a long time, things that we're really trying to overcome, and that is, the tax shift from centrally assessed to the homeowner. We want to make some significant changes in the future, which is why we feel like Ridge Road is a prime location. And I will say that I know that these conversations have been happening for a lot of years. I know Ridge Road has been a point of interest for a lot of years. But the good thing is, when I took this role a couple years ago, I will say that there has been, I believe, more movement in the last couple years than there has been in a long time. I think it kind of ebbs and flows, right? We've had interested companies that want to be out here. We've done a lot of research. There is a lot of interest, but I want to say that in the last few years, I'm really excited about the things that are happening and the conversations that we're having and the companies that are interested in coming here. One company has been, in the works for many, many years, and a couple new companies, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. But another thing I wanted to mention too is the mineral lease money. It's dropped significantly, which has also made an impact in the economy. So,
Let me jump in there if I could.
you bet.
So yeah, 5 years ago when I got in as a commissioner, Carbon County had 20 projects that it was paying on at a debt of $33 million. So as Shani mentions, the mineral lease money has gone away. We went from a time where things were booming with the gas companies, with the coal. The county was getting about $14 to $15 million a year. That dropped a couple years ago, just over 300,000. So the shift that we've had to see is basically, like Shani mentioned, the shift from the industry that was paying, and as Jade mentioned, the power plant, the carbon power plant closed in April of 15, was tore down in 2016. We've had some concern with mining here, right? 2019 was August of 2019 was the last time that coal was mined in Carbon County. You go back to the 1880s, early 1870s, or late 1870s. So we have had to reinvent ourselves. We've already been through what potentially, and we don't wish this on them, but what potentially Emery could go through. I don't want to speak too much about the availability of coal. It's not my wheelhouse, but I definitely know that stockpiles are definitely not what they used to be. My visual from the outside looking in, it looks pretty scary, but So knowing all of these parameters, we've had to just reinvent Carbon County, and that's the focus that Shanny's really come in and helped us with. There's some industries that we'll speak to that are very promising, and we've identified that Ridge Road could be the place where our next growth, our next transition will be. So just wanted to add that part.
So yeah, I'm going to kind of skip through this slide just because we've already covered this. But again, we do feel like this is a prime location, and more specifically because of the access to US Highway 6, Highway 10, right? We're all aware of that, and the Class 1 freight rail system. So. Okay, so here's the 3 companies that we're working with. You may or may not be aware of, we've got a 4th one that we're also talking with that we unfortunately cannot talk about, but these are the 3 that we can. We have SCS Utah Hydrogen. So we've been working with Utah Hydrogen for a couple of years now. I want to say about 5-6 months ago, they kind of fell off the radar. We hadn't heard anything for a while. And then they reached out to us, about 3 weeks ago. We had a really good conversation with them, and they still want to move forward. They are doing everything in their power to be here. This is the place they want to be. They were originally from California, and that did not pan out, so they're looking pretty seriously at Carbon County. Their biggest holdup right now is a Class 6 permit. And so they came to the county, asked for some help. We've done everything in our power to help them. I wrote a letter to, hold on, I wrote it down because I thought I'd forget. U.S. Department of Energy. So I wrote a letter on behalf of myself and the commissioners to them. And Larry sent out a couple emails trying to get this process going. I had heard through the grapevine that the last permit that they released, a Class 6, was about 5 years ago. So that's the challenge. But just so you know that they really do want to be here, and we're working hard to make that happen. And then one project that I've kind of taken the lead on is Clean Development International. They came to me about a year ago. They got some funding, and again, really love this area, really want to be out on Ridge Road. They're working hard to make that happen. Right now, they're in the process of doing a study on how much it would cost to put a CO2 well out on Ridge Road. So that's where they're at, but they have identified a location. They're in progress as far as purchasing that property. And so I have a really good feeling about them. Again, I don't know. I keep making comments to my staff. I said, once I bring one of these big industries, or I help bring one of these big industries here, I get to retire. I'm only halfway kidding, but anyway. And then the third one is Wellington Microtech, and they're the ones that we've been working with for
About a few years.
I want to, way before my time. I know that they, took a step back through the COVID era, right? Those years, and that now they're again really want to make things happen. So they are also, just so you know, working with the Utah Inland Port Authority to create a project area. So they're working pretty closely with them. I have a meeting with the Port Authority here in a couple of days to kind of talk about how that's transpiring. We signed a resolution with that, not a resolution, but a resolution with them saying that we're willing to work with them and we'd love to have them here. And they're, in the Port Authority, they really want to be here. They love the area. They like the fact that we have rail and other, things that they want to bring industry here. So those are essentially the three companies, and they're all in the developmental stages. I talk to Clean Development International on a weekly basis. His name's Roger. And anything else you want to add, those three?
One thing that we've seen because of the mining, because of the railroad, the infrastructure that we have here is what's attracted these four companies. The one thing that Utah Hydrogen lacks is electricity. They need, after they're fully built out, 150 megawatts of power, which Lauren can attest to. That's quite a bit. They've talked about bringing in for a 345 power line about 11 miles that they were going to install themselves. This is not a typo. It is a $2.5 billion project. Senator Hinkins and the state legislature, we've addressed them, and now we've got some different methods that we're going to try to do. But what I'm excited about are two of these companies want to use coal. And part of the investment and getting these dollars is they bring up that four-letter word to some New York bankers, and that's where the challenge has been. We're trying to work through that. They've got some other investors that are very excited about this opportunity. The other one, the clean development, that has more to do with corn husks and renewable things and developing energy. So just kind of wanted to tell you what these companies were and what they're about. And if there's any questions too at any time, just holler.
So we've definitely made some strides, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but these are some things that we're still having conversations about, that we're still working on, is the high pressure gas need on Ridge Road, the power needs, and these are essentially what these companies are looking for and are trying to accomplish. So I just wanted to point that out. Like Tony had mentioned, SCS needs power, so does Wellington Microtech. They all need power, but some need more gas than others, some need more water than others. Clean development needs a CO2 well. So those are the things that we're working through right now. So questions about that? But I also want to talk about some of the things that we've already done and things that we're doing to move forward. So the county had decided, actually, I'm going to let you speak to that, the sewer line project. He knows more about that because this was before my time, but that's already been done. Do you want to take a few minutes and tell him a little bit about that?
She looks to the politician to talk about sewer, and I don't know if she's saying I'm full of something or what, but no, as I mentioned, the utilities are what we're seeing are the shortfall out there. One thing that was fortunate with COVID, and I don't want to get too much into the politics of it, but we did get the American Rescue Plan Act dollars that we used for the sewer line. We put a sewer line, in essence, from Highway 10 over to the Savage loadout and beyond, just for these areas to use and develop. It was something that we could use the dollars for. We saw it was a long-term benefit for the community. We've seen other communities that took a smaller vision or view of those dollars that were more immediate. We felt as a commission that these things that we're going to spend these dollars on that we really didn't want to, if we are going to spend them, let's get them on something that's going to benefit the community long-term. So that is in. We had to make some smaller or some big adjustments, I would say, for a small crossing that goes where Wellington Microtech wanted to have a railroad go. So it is in, it's installed, and we're ready to start expanding once they're ready to start building.
So everyone got a sheet that covers the cost of these projects. So for high pressure gas, we're looking at actually 9 is kind of the high point, anywhere between 5 and 9 million. We've got water reuse, 8 million. Power for Wellington Microtech, 8. They need about 8 million. Power for SCS is 45 to 60. So 60 is the high end. And then the study that Clean Development's doing right now is about 450,000. So those are the challenges, things that we're trying to work towards. A couple other things. We were very fortunate this year to get some appropriations funding through Congressman Curtis's office. I know there are a lot of key players, even in this room, that made that happen. So we're super grateful, but that gave us an opportunity to purchase some land, or it will give us, once we get that funding, to purchase a chunk of land, and that comes with some water rights. So that will be an opportunity for the county to lease that property to industry. And we do have, again, a couple of companies that want to be in that specific area. So that's something that's happened recently. And I'm trying to think what else. Like I mentioned, we've done letters of support. We're working pretty close with the Port Authority, the Inland Port Authority. We have built out an area for a CRA should a company want to come in, and we can do a reinvestment. We can create a project for them as well. It's a very familiar or similar to what the Port Authority does, but we can do it through the county level as well. So companies will have a couple of options. They can work through the Inland Port Authority, or they can work through the county to develop a CRA. So one thing that I forgot to put on here that I thought I would share with you is we also contracted with a lobbyist, and his name is Spencer Stokes, and he has been a huge advocate for this specific project. So one thing I want to mention is the word is getting out. People believe in this, in what we're doing, and it's becoming widespread. We have a lot of people reaching out to us. We have a lot of working groups that are working on this. We have, a lot of key players who support this and want to be a part of this. And it's been really exciting for the commissioners and myself to see that happen. Because what used to be a conversation more closely to our county is now more widespread about the goals that we're trying to accomplish out on this specific area. So. And I did just include some maps of kind of the area. I don't know. It's hard. I meant to copy off some maps, but I wasn't able to make that happen. But anyway, this is just a snippet of the area that we're really working towards or working on out on Ridge Road. I've got a couple in here that I wanted to share with you. But that's it. Anything else you'd like to add? We'll open it up for questions.
Just if there's any questions. The area that we're talking about mainly is, if you're familiar with the Savage loadout and the rail that comes north-south, it's to the east side of that. It's about 330 acres. There's about 550 water shares that are a part of this project, part of this development area. We've had the governor out there. We've had Senator Hinkins and many others just showing and identifying what our plan is and what we want to do. So it's potentially going to be a great thing for Carbon County. It's just not happening as quick as we would like, but it is in motion, as Shani said. So. We all know about the Oakland port and the money that was set aside for 4 counties. There's a whole bunch of there's a whole bunch of different things that play out that way. We tried to go after those dollars. We weren't successful. Maybe we were a little naive going after that, but we have talked to Senator Hinkins, Christine Watkins, and others about getting these dollars. As we said, that first company, the hydrogen company, they would have paid for all of the development, the high pressure gas line, the electricity, they would have paid for that. What we're trying to do is find other sources as well. Obviously, Carbon County doesn't have the funds to do it, else we've already been in motion that way. So these have just been what Jones and DeMille and others have identified to us as what the cost would be for us to expand. That would be in total. And we would take this as a phased approach, one item at a time. We've had a power study done with, I see Merlin came in, and with Pacific Corp as well. And there's about 10 to 12 megawatts of power available in the valley. Again, like I mentioned, that hydrogen company wanted or would need 150 megawatts. So as these come in, we'll have to develop them and build them out. But no, we unless Shani's got some funds that we don't know about.
And that's one of the reasons we hired a lobbyist too, because we want them to go up north and tell our story and help us with some funding requests. So things are in the works, but no, we don't currently have the capacity for any of that right now. So financially.
Perfect.
Other questions? I don't know what our time is.
Okay.
So. No other questions? We did good. Good job.
Awesome. Thanks, Shannon.
So as Carbon County mentioned, we were able to get several tours of Ridge Road this year, one of which was a legislative tour where the very groups who are sponsoring this group actually helped put that together, both Carbon and Emery County, Southeastern Regional Development, Office of Energy Development, and the Division of Oil, Gas, and Mining. Hopefully we look forward to some more of those opportunities in the future because we have so much opportunity here. We have a lot of resources. Of course, we're a small community. We're short on people, but we're high on resources. So speaking of the legislative tour from this summer, one of the other places that we visited was the San Rafael Energy Center. And today, Dr. Pearson is going to talk to us about some of the work being done there. Dr. Pearson serves as the director of the San Rafael Energy Research Center in Emery County, where he works with local leaders and universities of research and commercialize groundbreaking and sustainable energy technologies. Dr. Pearson received an undergraduate degree in chemical engineering from BYU and a PhD in chemical engineering from the University of California, Irvine. Most of Dr. Pearson's current work is related to the energy-filled nuclear and advancement of unconventional fossil fuels. So with that, Dr. Pearson.
Welcome, everyone. Sorry. I'm delighted to be here today and really appreciate that introduction, Bart, and the remarks from Shani and Jade as well. It's a good segue into this presentation, and I'm really excited about the Ridge Road project. I really like hearing the presentation over and over because the more I learn, the more I see what's going on and see the potential. And that discussion really set the stage for just what we're all familiar with here, the challenges and transitions that we're going through in our community and what really inspired the San Rafael Energy Research Center and the work that's going on there. And so, again, I'm delighted to be here. Thankful for everyone that's joining remotely that wasn't able to come down here today. I feel like I'm with a community of friends here, gotten to know many of you very, very well, and it's been a joy working with you. And so, the San Rafael Energy Research Center was started with the vision of the 7-county infrastructure coalition and the Emery County commissioners who saw these transitions that were coming through, some of our coal resources being depleted, and an opportunity for the local community and the state of Utah to take a leadership role, and not just our state, but national and global energy transitions. And what has been set up here has been very beautiful and a tremendous privilege for me to put my effort in directing the efforts that are going on here. So this building, and I'll just mention, I do have a few extra minutes for my presentation. You did end a little early, Shani, and so this presentation's for you. And so if there are any questions, I may be talking a little faster here or there, but by all means, raise your hand and I'll stop and want to get your concerns out there, get your questions out there, and answer them as we present what we're doing here. So some of you may recognize the concrete facility here. It was an old coal mining parts warehouse that went out of service, and the local commission acquired the building and retrofitted it to do the research that we do, and then the building on the side does our coal research, and then right just east of that, we're building a new building to do some additional advanced coal research. And so generally, for those that aren't familiar with this location, we're down just south of Price, right between the Hunter and Huntington coal plants. And as Jade mentioned, the Pacific Corp has a new IRP with plans to transition these two coal plants into advanced nuclear power plants. It's similar to the transition that's going on up in Kemmerer. And so obviously our research center was established before that announcement. So we are in a tremendously strategic location, having half of our work being advanced nuclear power development, being located right in between two of the most advanced reactors that are going to be built on the planet. So we can do supporting research, do supporting training, and workforce development for those future plants that are coming in, and I'll speak a little bit more to that. So first, our center is set up to do this advanced energy research, and then also the local commission, and here's, this is my slide, just showing some of the research. And then second, our commission had the vision to, here's the research center, to acquire land just 100 acres north of the research center to establish an industrial park, kind of like Ridge Road. And so what we have the opportunity to do here is to invite companies to manufacture advanced energy production, providing more jobs and opportunity to the region. And as well, technologies that we research and develop at the research center can then go directly into our industrial park and be commercialized there. So that's kind of our general high-level two-pronged approach, research and manufacturing. So I'll just briefly note the technologies that we're working on. I've already mentioned advanced nuclear power generation. We're working on advanced coal power generation. We're also working on hydrogen power and water desalination and critical minerals. And these are projects that we do already have funding for and are in the process of developing. And I'll note, it was nice to hear that Congressman Curtis had helped you with an appropriation for the Ridge Road. He as well want to acknowledge that he helped us receive $3 million for these hydrogen and some other projects, an advanced microscope that we're acquiring, and the desalination work that we're doing at our center. So very grateful for that support that came from a federal appropriation last year. And then here's some additional areas that we're been working with collaborators and trying to do research at the center as well. Critical mineral separations and used nuclear fuel recycling, integrated energy systems, nuclear workforce training and development. We've got a big grant out to the Department of Energy for lithium-ion battery recycling, which is a big emerging field, and solar thermal energy. I believe very strongly, after seeing the potential that Utah has to be a national energy leader. I worked for 1 year as a AAAS congressional fellow in Senator Hatch's office in DC in 2015, and thought a lot about this potential that Utah has to be a national energy leader. And I think in addition to the technical aspect, Utah also has an opportunity to be a national leader in the energy discussion and what sustainable energy means and what sustainable energy transition means. There are a lot of different perspectives nationally on how we define this and how we approach this. And I think that we are in a position to define this discussion. And so before I delve into the individual technologies that we're working on, I want to take a moment and speak to you on what is sustainable energy and what is it that we're doing. And so, take a step back in history with me for a moment. Imagine yourself more than 60 years, almost 70 years ago, Admiral Hyman Rickover speaking to an audience like this, people around tables eating dinner. There was a bunch of doctors. In 1957, gave a very relaxed dinner speech called Energy Resources and Our Future. And he defined sustainable energy and what energy means for society. I'd like to view this discourse as the most profound discourse of the 20th century. After he gave this discourse, he filed it away in his boxes, and it wasn't uncovered until 2006 by biographers, and it was just made available. And I printed about 50 copies, so if any of this intrigues you, feel free to come up and grab a copy after the presentation. I see you smiling, Kevin. You know I like this one. So he defines really clearly that life and progress on Earth supported by energy and not possible without energy. The ability for us to move beyond expending all of our energy from dusk till dawn, just getting the bare necessities of life, and moving towards innovations and discoveries from medical to all housing and all education and the arts and all other things. It all hinges on our access to energy. And the flip side is opposite. The moment we curtail our access to energy, we lose all of that and go backwards. And so energy is absolutely critical to our progress. And so think about the biggest aspirations you have and things you want to see in the future. And it's possible if we have energy, but also cheap energy. And if we have the right knowledge. And author Steven Pinker, who's one of the authors that I really like, has mentioned that given the right knowledge, anything is possible. And so, for example, curing cancer. If we have energy and knowledge, we will do that. And so here's a slide with Steven Pinker's quote. He mentions energy challenged by knowledge is the elixir of life. And he also goes on to say, in other words, that entropy is what we're really fighting against. And energy is what allows us to organize, to find solutions, and overcome entropy, which is fighting against life. And this is something we learn in chemistry and our really scientific statement, but it's applicable generally to human relations and a lot of things. So it's really important here, because one way I like to view it is if we divide ourselves into groups and say that one energy is better than the other and get into political battles here, we're fighting the wrong battle, because humans are not the enemy. That entropy is what we're fighting against as a human race. And so the real battle is to have accessible energy and have cheap energy. That's what is helping humanity. And so I'm just super impressed with Governor Cox's approach and the energy policy that the state of Utah has established. I think it is absolutely in line with this theory. It's a human-centric energy approach that our Office of Energy Development and the governor's taking to create accessible and cheap energy to extend our capabilities and to disagree better and to come together, realize that people aren't the enemy, that we're all working together on this to find energy solutions. And here at the Energy Research Center, we're playing a big role in this. And so I've kind of hinted at this, but think to yourself for a moment. What is the defining challenge of this century? There's a lot of them, and we all have our own views, but think, if you were to decide, what is the defining challenge that we as a global society are trying to accomplish this century? I would submit that because of the importance that energy holds, it's sustainable energy. And Elon Musk has stated one of the biggest challenges the world has ever faced is the transition to sustainable energy and to a sustainable economy. That will take decades to complete. So I mentioned to you Admiral Rickover's talk. And in 1957, there was a paper written 1 year before that inspired his talk. It was by M. King Hubbert, and he talked about peak oil. It was called Nuclear Energy in the Fossil Fuels. This is a diagram from his paper. And it simply points out the obvious, that there's going to come a point within the next 100 to 200 years where our fossil fuels run out. So whether or not we need to expedite this, and whether or not we do it for environmental or other reasons, we need to be developing the alternative technologies so that we do not have a shock when the fossil fuels run out. And so it's imperative for us to be developing the nuclear energy, the solar energy, all the other solutions that will help us transition. This is a transition that's only going to happen one time in the history of the human race. And it's this century that it's happening. And so that's why I view it as the defining challenge of this century. It is the challenge that we're working on at the San Rafael Energy Research Center, and the solutions for which are going to place Utah on the map as a national and global leader. So having discussed sustainable energy now, and just the energy discussion in general, let's dive into the individual energy projects that we're working on at the Research Center. So I already talked a little about advanced nuclear energy. There are a lot of different reactors that improve efficiencies, improve safety, and other positive aspects of nuclear energy. You can miniaturize them in small modular reactors, so you can take them on semi-trucks into remote areas. And the company that we started working with when this center was formed is called Alpha Tech Research Corp, and they're working on a small molten salt nuclear reactor. And I'm really excited about molten salt reactors because I believe very strongly that they have the potential in the future to be the cheapest and most versatile of all advanced nuclear reactors. So it's really exciting that we here at the center are working on this reactor. And also, the beginnings of the center was around advanced coal research. And when you look up if you get curious and you want to look up the molten salt nuclear reactor on Wikipedia and just read more about it, it'll show you this diagram, which just so happens to be connected. Here's the molten salt reactor, and here's the power cycle that takes the heat and makes electricity. Happens to be connected to an advanced power cycle called the supercritical CO2 Brayton cycle, which improves efficiencies and makes coal plants and nuclear reactor plants work better. And so it just so happens that Dr. Andrew Fry, who's going to come to the next collaborative, so strongly invite everyone to come listen to him speak, because he's incredible. He's going to go more into detail on his work. But he has a $5 million Department of Energy grant where he has built the largest coal demonstration in the nation, maybe the planet, demonstrating the supercritical CO2 power cycle. And so when I was learning about the San Rafael Energy Research Center, the fact that we were working on the reactor and the power cycle here in Utah blew my mind, and it was so incredible that we were taking this leadership role, and I had an opportunity to work in this field. So, and this looks a little complex, so I'm actually going to break it down for you, because I think one important aspect of it, it may seem complex, but some of this stuff is simple, and it really helps to understand things, to not be afraid of them, and to know what's going on. So I just want to take a moment and just show you how a coal plant and a nuclear power plant work. And I'll briefly just skip through some slides here to you. Here's some equipment that we acquired through Community Impact Board funds that the state provided that helps us do this molten salt research, to purify our salts and do the separations work that I'll speak to in a moment. So all of this was supplied with help from the state, and we're very appreciative of that. And here is the microscope that we'll be getting, the scanning electron microscope that Congressman Curtis helped us get with federal funding appropriations. Here's a picture of the equipment set up in the lab and special glove boxes that we have to perform the research. Okay, and so now let's just talk for a moment about how our power plants work right now, and how the future ones work, and how this supercritical CO2 Brayton cycle fits in, because it's so exciting. So when you go about trying to create the electricity that we all use from our power plants, it's a really simple approach. You have a closed loop with water in it, which gets fed into a pump as a liquid, pushes the water through a coal flame that boils it. You can imagine when you turn a small amount of water into steam, I should know the ratio. I'm a chemical engineer, and I don't know it. I think it increases the volume by 1,000 times. Something massive. How much is it? It's 3,000. 3,000. Okay, I wasn't that far off. And so that massive increase creates a lot of pressure. That's the pressure that spins your turbine and creates the electricity. And then you use a river or some other cool source to then turn the steam back to a liquid, which is easier to pump. So you try to pump a gas, it's a lot more energy intensive, and you lose efficiencies. This is the standard process that works really well at all of our power plants. And so now, what is nuclear energy? It's the current nuclear power plants that we have in the country are exactly the same thing. Here's what a nuclear power plant looks like. So same thing, pumping liquid water. Instead of over a coal flame, you're just passing it through the hot nuclear rods. They create steam that spins a turbine, spins a generator, and creates electricity for people. And there's one slight variation that if you want to isolate the nuclear components a little better, you can create a secondary loop. And so they're called pressurized water reactors, where you have liquid water passing the heat to a steam generator. And most of the nuclear power plants in our country are of this type. And so really good design works for both coal and nuclear, but especially in the case of nuclear, which runs a little colder, only 33% efficient. So of all the energy coming out, you convert 33% to electricity, and the rest gets thrown away with the water coming out. So the question comes up, if we want to build a better plant that's cheaper and more efficient, how can we do it more efficiently? And the answer is in this power cycle. Instead of throwing all this heat out with your stream and your condensing unit, because a lot of the energy to go from steam to liquid, that's a lot of energy lost. Just like it takes a lot of energy to boil, if you go back from steam to liquid, you lose a lot of energy. So it's called a phase transition, from one phase to another, from gas to liquid. All that energy is just lost and not used. It's kind of used because it made this possible, but it could be harnessed to make more energy. So the question arises, does a special fluid exist that can go from a dense liquid to a not dense gas and back without going through a phase change? Is that just made up, or does it even exist? And the answer is that it does. That's what a supercritical fluid is called. And chemical engineers, we like these phase diagrams that show the temperatures and pressures at which any compound exists as a gas or a liquid or a solid. If you take a solid like ice and increase it in temperature, it melts to a liquid, and then it goes to a gas. And then if you drop it in temperature, it goes to liquid and then freezes. Or if you raise it a gas in pressure, it can condense to a liquid, and then squeeze it harder, it turns into a solid. But you get it hot enough and low pressure, or high pressure enough, you get what's called a supercritical fluid. And so it's neither a gas nor a liquid. It's something that has properties of both. It can be very dense if you pressurize it and act like a liquid, or if you raise the temperature and reduce the pressure, it acts like a gas. It can expand and push a turbine. And so it is the implementation of this very special fluid in a coal and a nuclear cycle that increases the efficiencies and gives you more bang for your buck in a nuclear and a coal reactor. And this is what we're studying at the center. And I just found some interesting videos on Facebook that I want to show you, just so you can visualize. Everybody knows what dry ice is. It's frozen CO2. So if you put dry ice in a chamber, and then heat it up with a hairdryer, and it will go up in pressure as well at the same time. The dry ice will melt. You'll have liquid CO2 and gaseous CO2. You keep heating it up more and more. See, that place that distinguishes the phases starts to blur, blurs even more, and then completely spreads around. So what you're looking at in this chamber, it's neither liquid nor gas. It's supercritical CO2. You put your finger there and swirled it around, you'd feel like you were touching a liquid. There's something dense in there, but it's not a liquid, and it's not a gas either. So there's a little visualization for you of what supercritical CO2 is. So when Andrew comes in the next meeting, he's going to talk in more detail about this, and as well as some other work that he's doing. Here's his coal furnace with the pipes that are filled with supercritical CO2. And then he's also performing other advanced coal research where you use coal not for energy, but for alternative things like char and pitch and liquids. You can change the pitch to carbon fiber and carbon nanotubes. And our new building that we're setting up is going to support his research with coal to syngas production, hydrogen and syngas. So these are some other areas that we're focusing on that Dr. Andrew Fry is leading, and we'll speak on more next time. Okay, so I realize I didn't pause to allow any questions, so I apologize for that. I do get a little nervous when I speak, so I'm going to go through other stuff we're working on, but I do want to stop for a second and just see if there's any questions. Go ahead.
The way the smaller nuclear reactors perform, is there any chemical waste from that, or does it just kind of reuse it? I don't know that I grasp that, so.
Beautiful question, and that's actually what I'm prepared to talk about more, is that whenever you put uranium in a nuclear reactor, and then it fissions or splits and releases energy, what is it splitting into? Is it splitting into green ooze or something we don't even know? What it's splitting into is every element on the periodic table. Things that we do know and things that we know how to use. We just don't know how to separate them yet. And so it comes out of this reactor all radioactive and hot. And since we don't know how to separate it and use it, we call it waste and we kind of safely store it. And 95% of what comes out is just the same uranium that went in and it's still fuel. So essentially we're kind of taking a log, burning the bark, and then throwing the rest away. And all the fuel's still there. And so just like any reactor, these current reactors create this spent nuclear fuel is the term that I prefer, which can also be termed waste. But there's a lot of benefits to figuring out how to use it, and that's what I'm going to talk about in just a sec. So thank you for that question. But does that answer it well enough, or do you have?
I just, it seems like as you process it, something comes out and could you possibly reuse it, which it sounds like you're exploring.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, any other questions? Go ahead.
What's the cost comparison of a per kilowatt or megawatt hour compared to coal?
Thank you. I like to refer to the EIA, Energy Information Administration's levelized cost of electricity, and those have the most up-to-date estimates, and I think they're generally in terms of dollars per megawatt hour, and $100 per megawatt hour is what you kind of see for coal and nuclear sometimes. And then you got natural gas, which can, in our day of fracking, has dropped in the 30s, so super low. And wind and solar have dropped in the 30s, so super low. And that's why wind and solar have gotten so much in the market. But the more wind and solar penetrate the market, then you need backup. And then batteries or other backup storage. And so that raises the levelized cost. And so going back to the original comment from Admiral Rickover, the key for future energy is to make it sustainable, but also cheaper. So I'm energy agnostic. Whoever can come up with the cheapest energy, that's what's going to serve society. So I'd like to say that advanced nuclear is going to get cheaper and cheaper. But it's been difficult over the last decades because of the safety aspects that have been added, which has been good, but just not having all the supply chains in place and delays and cost overruns. But ultimately, I do believe, especially with the molten salt reactor and just us advancing the way that we do things, that we can get nuclear reactor into the 50s and 30s and dollars per megawatt hour. And then if you do the math, there's actually enough uranium on the planet to power the Earth for 1 billion years with nuclear fission. Fusion, imagine it would be the same way. So we're not running out of energy. We have enough energy to supply the food and water that society needs. And I meant to say just a second before, when I asked the question, what's the defining challenge of this century? You may have been thinking world peace, right? That's a good challenge. And in my mind, spreading the message of that we have enough energy and creating sustainable energy is directly linked to world peace. Because a lot of the turmoil, you could say almost all the turmoil and discord and challenges in the world are tied to a fear of lack of resources. If we have enough energy, we have enough water, we have enough agriculture and food, and we have everything. So when I think of sustainable energy, I'm thinking of world peace at the same time and solving both of the problems at the same time. And that has to happen not just with having all the energy we need, but continually making it cheaper. And so that's what we're working on at the research center, is to make nuclear cheaper. I just can't make any guarantees on the price yet. So does that answer your question, or do you? Okay. We can take one more question if we have one, then I'll go on.
I know the standard response from scientists, engineers, and lawyers is always, it depends. But can you throw a number at the percentage of efficiency improvement by using supercritical fluids?
Oh, for sure. Yep, and I should have mentioned that. The numbers that I've been hearing is between 40 to 50% efficient. So 45 is a good number. Nuclear power plants are about 33% efficient. Coal runs a little hotter. Lauren could tell us, but I think they're maybe around 40%. But take the nuclear power plant, for example, going from 33 to 45. That's nearly a 50% improvement in the energy you're getting out of the fuel. It's incredible. Yep. All right, so let's talk about some of these other technologies that we're working on and really excited about at the center.
Do you care if I mention something?
Go ahead.
So somebody asked what the power breakdown, and coal's actually a lot cheaper. So even in the EIM or in a regional basis, you're probably $30 to $40 a megawatt. And natural gas, depending on your technology, is probably $40 to $50 to $60 a megawatt.
Okay, thanks for that correction.
And then solar, you have to look at the subsidized cost or the tax credit cost or the true megawatt cost when you do your analysis.
Mm-hmm. That's great, and I'm a big fan of coal, so I'm glad you corrected that, because I didn't want to misspeak on its cost. I think coal is something we have a lot of still, and there's a lot that we can still do with it. And if we can do it cheaper, then it deserves a place in the market. And we do have some challenges where when coal gets exported and becomes an international commodity, that influences the price, but then we have the opportunity to export it too, which benefits us. So it could come down a number of ways, but thanks for that. So hydrogen, this is why I went to grad school, is to study hydrogen. Went to a hydrogen fuel cell conference, in Palm Springs in 2005. And half the reason I went was to learn about hydrogen. The other half was because Arnold Schwarzenegger, the governor, was supposed to be speaking, but then he didn't make it. I thought it would have been cool to meet him. But I got to drive a hydrogen fuel cell vehicle, and there were pictures on the wall of birds drinking water out of the tailpipe, because that's all that comes out of the tailpipe. And I thought that was so cool, and even got the Honda to peel out. So they got energy just like a Tesla too. And so hydrogen has a really big future, and in our transition as fossil fuels run out to what we're going to be doing in the indefinite future. And this is the amazing thing. Utah is already taking the biggest leadership role in the country in hydrogen in the Intermountain Power Plant and the ACES Delta project, which you're probably very familiar with. That is the largest energy storage project on the globe, as they create hydrogen and store it to run their integrated combined cycle, their natural gas combustion turbines. And so, in speaking with ACES Delta project, they have aspirations to not just create power, but to pipe out hydrogen that they produce regionally. And the hydrogen hub proposal that they recently submitted, which unfortunately wasn't funded, but they're still looking to pursue it, is to pipe hydrogen to California, which can then be used for these hydrogen-powered vehicles. And it could also have a manifold where other hydrogen generator stations plug in the hydrogen to the line. If we are creating hydrogen at Ridge Road and other locations, such as our industrial park, if a pipeline goes out to Denver, we could put hydrogen into that. We could pipe hydrogen to Idaho National Lab for study, and then when they ramp up more nuclear reactors and create hydrogen, they could put hydrogen into this pipeline. So Utah literally becomes the hydrogen hub of the West. I think the leadership in Utah with Intermountain Power Plant for hydrogen has already started. I think that Utah is going to hold this mantle indefinitely and continue to grow in this regard. And so the electrolyzer technology that they're using at Intermountain Power Plant, there's a lot of different, just like there's a lot of different kind of power plants, there's a lot of different ways to create hydrogen. And if you want to split, the cheapest way to make hydrogen is from coal and natural gas. But if you want to do it with water, like they're doing at IPP, there are more efficient ways of doing it. And a company called Oxeon, who makes an electrolyzer in Salt Lake, is developing a technology that's the next step up in efficiency compared to what's currently being utilized at IPP. They're called solid oxide electrolysis cells. And this is a company with a very long history with Ceramatech. They've been around for decades. They have an electrolyzer producing breathable and oxygen on Mars right now. Really exciting company. And so we have funding through our Curtis funds to bring one of their electrolyzers to our center and study how we can use it dynamically with renewable energy so that it doesn't break down and it lasts a long time, demonstrate that it can be used for this purpose, and then it can be manufactured in our industrial park and utilized at the IPP, at the ACES project, as they expand and start to ship out hydrogen to other areas. So a big concern with the IPP project is where are we getting the water from? We live in the third driest state in the second or third driest state in the nation. We need, in the immediate short term, to think about water conservation. But in the long term, Utah has tremendous opportunity that I can't dive into right now, but to augment water supply. There's a lot of ways we can do this. One of the first and most immediate ways is pulling up our brine aquifers that exist below Utah, pulling out the minerals and creating fresh water through desalination. There's thermal processes that can do this that could be coupled to nuclear reactors. And what you do is you put these salty waters in that otherwise or underground weren't going to be used. You pull them out, you create new fresh water, and then that really salty water you can put in evaporation ponds and collect and sell the minerals. And as you probably know, Utah is a national leader in minerals production from brines, with U.S. magnesium and Compass Minerals on the Salt Lake. So we would only be expanding what Utah is already a leader in through these processes. And so we're bringing a thermal desal unit to the center, and we're going to test it on local produced waters from oil and gas and brines, other brine aquifers. And just a couple months ago, we got in touch with a company called Eaton Tech that just got a $250,000 grant from the Utah Innovation Fund and presented alongside the governor 2 weeks ago. There's a young group that developed an advanced centrifugal desalination technology. And they came out of Utah Tech in southern Utah. And what their process does, uses standard reverse osmosis technology that's used in almost any desalination plant. And they increase the efficiency and are hoping to reduce the costs, because instead of pumping the salty water and squeezing it through a membrane, in which case the brine comes out with a lot of pressure, and pressure equals energy, and you just lose that energy. And so their thought is, how do you recapture that energy? Well, you spin the solution, so the pressure is created by the spinning, and then when it comes back to the center of the centrifuge, all of that pressure is recaptured as rotational energy. And so without any additional equipment, they've recaptured all that energy and and improved the efficiency. So it's kind of the same thing as an ice skater. When they put their hands out and they're spinning slow and they pull them in and they start spinning really fast, that energy is all converted to rotational energy. So it's the same thing here. It's a recapture of energy and improved efficiency. So I learned about their technology, got excited, got on the phone with them to invite them to demonstrate their technology at our research center. And it turns out they already wanted to. And so we had a great discussion. And so hopefully shortly we'll be demonstrating their technology at our center. They already have partnerships with the Navajo Nation. They want to help them desalinate brackish waters below their nation and augment their water supply. And then once their first larger prototype at our center is successfully demonstrated, they have collaborations lined up with a brand new sustainable city called Neom in Saudi Arabia, where they then want to take their technology. This technology can be successfully produced in Utah and then even manufactured in our industrial park and go from Utah to all around the world. So really excited about this project. I'll pause again. Any questions? Five minutes? Oh, 10. Okay, good. Okay, so this refers back to the question you had made on what comes out of a nuclear reactor. I need a prettier picture, but this is one of the ones that I have that I like, because this is the periodic table. We know every element that exists on Earth. And as chemists, we love this table. We're looking at it almost every day when we want to learn about a new element. So for example, here's hydrogen, boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, aluminum, silicon, magnesium, lithium. And so in this case here, every element that has a number is what comes out of a nuclear reactor. Every element that doesn't, it doesn't come out of a nuclear reactor. And so what we're seeing, and here we see the rare earth metals that can be used in a lot of applications. And so this is a diagram of multiple critical elements that are useful today, but they're all bunched together, and we can't separate them and use them until we have the technology, the separations technology, which we're equipped at our research center to develop, and we're actively pursuing. If you could separate all of these elements out of used nuclear fuel, you could put much of them to use. And the analogy I like to think of is I learned growing up, it was often stated, the Native Americans, it was really great how they had the habit of using the whole buffalo and not just using the hides and discarding the rest. I view the future of nuclear fuel exactly the same way. We take something that was once considered waste and we find ways to utilize all of it. And the aspiration is to have minimize the waste or even eliminate the waste. And it's commonly said, well, we could never eliminate all of it. But I'll just point out, this is one of the nastiest, strontium and cesium are one of the nastiest things that are nuclear waste, considered nasty because they produce a lot of radiation. Well, radiation is heat. Radiation is what we use, is the energy we use for good. If you have the technology to separate these two in a pure form, then these are better than anything else on this periodic table to make advanced batteries that run 20 years without a charge. These are the batteries that are running the rovers on Mars right now as we speak. And a company that we're working with is interested in making similar rovers and battery supplies that could be run on the moon. They would be done in a special fabrication facility that we've received some funding from the state to start designing. And so here at our research center, we could fabricate these batteries and in our high bay room. And this is a depiction of what they look like. They could go in remote areas like the bottom of the ocean, Antarctic, or out in space, and last for 20 years without a charge. Very brilliant and amazing power source that already exists, and we have much more resources in our used nuclear fuel to create more of these for use on Earth. And so, like I mentioned, 95% of the used nuclear fuel is just the same fuel that went in. So if we could pull that used fuel out and use it again as fuel, we already reduced the waste quantity by a factor of 20. And so there's a company called Oklo. Its whole business design is on using recycled nuclear fuel as their fuel rather than mining fresh and enriching fresh uranium. This is a company that was the first to submit their reactor design to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and they're the first company to source initial fuel from Idaho National Lab for their demonstration, so they're really far ahead. They're small, 10 to 50 megawatts. There's a lot of places, including even at Ridge Road someday, where they could supply power. And in addition to developing their nuclear reactor, they're taking the national lead on used nuclear fuel recycling. And so this is a leadership role that I've thought a lot about, that Utah could actually be the leader. And recycling used nuclear fuel, making fresh fuel for these advanced nuclear reactors that are coming online. The pilot demonstration facility alone that Argonne National Lab has written up that Oklo is planning to implement would be $500 million, and something like that could be done at our industrial park or somewhere else in Utah. The full-scale commercial operations of used nuclear fuel recycling would be a multi-billion-dollar industry. It would be the biggest advancement in nuclear industry since the development of nuclear industry itself. It is very hard to overstate what it would mean for the state that houses this industry. And Utah could potentially be poised to be the national leader in doing this. So all the separations technology to really advance this process is what we're working on in our research center. So we're really excited about that. And this, again, goes hand in hand with Oklo's development. Okay, so I just got like 1 or 2 slides left, and we'll wrap it up here. Okay, so this is one of my passions that I'm really excited to talk about. Sometimes it gets a little difficult for me to explain or complex, but the way I like to break it down is to just think, as we were talking, if we need to transition all of our processes as coal and natural gas run out to nuclear and solar, how do we do that? Well, let's break it down into 3 sectors: the transportation sector, the electric grid sector, and industrial sector. So how difficult are those to transition to nuclear and renewables. So the electric grid sector is totally easy. We already know how to do it. We have hydro plants, we can do solar energy, we can do nuclear energy and make electricity. Straightforward. It's just a matter of doing it. The transportation sector is almost as straightforward. We already have electric vehicles, and we can make hydrogen fuel cell vehicles. Planes and ships will lag a little bit more, but that can be straightforward as well. But when it comes to industry, how you make cement, how you make fertilizer, how you desalinate, how do you make hydrogen, how do you make steel, doing all those processes with nuclear heat instead of fossil fuels, it gets really difficult. And it's not transferable from one industry to the next. You have to develop and prove every single process. I believe that our research center is poised to be a national demonstration center of how to apply nuclear heat to industrial processes. And this is termed integrated energy systems. And I'm really excited about our ability to demonstrate this. And so the way we can go about doing it, the way they're doing it at Idaho National Lab, I'll show you first. So they have a little facility that creates heat electrically, and they pretend it's a nuclear reactor, and then they couple it to industrial processes like hydrogen production, desalination. They simulate the grid, they test storage technologies, they have a whole facility for doing this. And it's led by Dr. Richard Boardman and Shannon Bragg-Sitton, who we know really well. And they've got an excellent work they're doing there. They're the national leads for doing this kind of work. So what we can do at our research facility is we can take Dr. Andrew Fry's coal furnace and have this be what makes heat and pretends to be the nuclear reactor. And then we apply it to the heat that comes out of the coal furnace to different industrial processes, and collect the data, collect the controls data and any other data, safety data that's required to demonstrate that you can take a massive heat source and transfer the heat to industrial process and make it work. And as we grow our hydrogen and desalination research at our center, these will be the first that we can demonstrate. We can create heat in our coal furnace, pretend it's a nuclear power plant, and then desalinate water to get pure water, and then split it in an electrolyzer to create hydrogen. We can demonstrate these whole integrated systems here at our research center and get additional federal funding to do that. And those technologies can then be implemented worldwide, and they can specifically be manufactured at our industrial park as well. So that's integrated energy systems. Workforce training and development, we've been working with pursuing deep technology grants with the Utah Talent Ready group to establish at USU Eastern training programs to train the future workforce of nuclear power plants that could be in our region. And we've been working with companies that can bring the reactor simulators to our site, and we can be a central location for training staff on how to run these future nuclear reactors. That's another endeavor that we're pursuing. And I mentioned a large, nearly $8 million grant that Dr. Andrew Fry is leading, where we would use his rotary kiln furnace in an advanced process to more economically recycle lithium-ion batteries, get the lithium out, and make new batteries. And so maybe that when Andrew comes to speak with us next time, we've already received this grant, and he can really speak in depth to this. So it's a really exciting grant we're working on. Another one we're working on in collaboration with Utah State University is a solar thermal energy storage grant. And so if you've driven through Las Vegas to California, you've probably seen these power towers. It's a different kind of solar power that doesn't go right to electricity. These mirrors reflect onto the tower and melt a salt in here, and then the heat from that salt's taken to create steam and spin a turbine and generate electricity. And the reason they did it this way is because you store that heat in that molten salt, and then you can create electricity overnight. It's a way of making solar power work at the nighttime as well, through storage. So we're working on a specific technology. You can also collect the sun in these parabolic mirrors. That fluid goes right through the middle of the mirrors, heats up, and then you take that hot fluid and use it, and you can store heat that way for the night too. And so this grant, we're working specifically on a storage technology where you don't just heat up a molten salt, you actually store it in the phase transition. And so remember how in the nuclear power plant I mentioned going from steam, gas to a vapor to a liquid, you lose a lot of energy, or the reverse, you put a lot of energy in. It's the same going from a liquid to a solid. So if you take a salt that's a solid, you take the solar heat and melt it, then you can detach it and then put water in and create steam as you freeze it. And this is a way to take solar energy, create steam for industrial processes that works during the day and the night. And if the project is successful, we'll have a series of these parabolic mirrors set up at the research center. We'll demonstrate it that it works. And the really exciting thing, just a couple weeks ago, I was talking with the leadership, the 6-county coalition, and the agri-park Inland Hub. If you're familiar with it, just south of Nephi, they're planning on building a big inland hub agriculture park where they centralize agriculture work in the state. They're going to need lots of steam, and so they're interested in being a partner with us in demonstrating this technology at the agri-park if successful. And lastly, one that we've been working on that we haven't landed yet, but I still think is really exciting, is when we go to space, have really advanced defense satellites or try to go to Mars faster than we can with fossil fuels, we're going to be using nuclear-powered rockets. One of the lead companies developing these rockets, Ultrasafe Nuclear, has their outfit in Salt Lake, and they're looking for additional locations to test their components of their rockets in a lab that has a nuclear materials handling license, which we do. And so there's a potential for us to bring some of their equipment at some point to our research facility and design nuclear thermal rockets at our research center. So with that, that's the end of my presentation. And any last questions? One question in the back. Should we go for it?
Thank you. Just quickly wanted to ask if you have a round number. You mentioned so many grants that you've received from the infrastructure bill, and I just wonder if you have a round number of the total amount of federal funding and grants that you've received over the lifetime of this facility, or just since the passage of the infrastructure bill in 2021.
I should have it more on the tip of my tongue, but I'll just have to give you a round number, like you say. I'd say around 20 million, but Commissioner Citrid could correct me if you combine state and federal and everything. Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you go federal, it's the 3 million that Congressman Curtis helped us get, and the 1 million of Andrew Fry's DOE grant that we got. So yeah, about 4 million federal. Yep. Okay, well, thank you so much, and feel free to catch me in the break for any questions, other questions that you have.
Thank you, Dr. Fry. So we're to our morning break at this point. We'd like to thank Southeastern Regional Development Agency for providing the snacks and drinks for the morning break. So please be back here at 11:05 and we'll start our next presentation. Thank you. Okay, we're going to get ready to go ahead and start the second half of our meeting today. So I walked up here without my agenda, but I'll do the best I can. Our first presenter in the second half is going to be EGI, Energy and Geoscience Institute at the University of Utah, and Alan Walker, a petroleum engineer and the operations manager at EGI, will start our presentation. Alan is responsible for staff operation, supporting research in geothermal science, hydrocarbon and critical mineral, geoscience and carbon management at EGI. And Alan's got some 40 years of experience in the energy sector, including dealing with the gas storage blowout at the Alyssa Canyon storage facility. So Alan, I'll let you take it over from here.
Thank you, Bart. Appreciate that. I really want to give my appreciation to the Division of Oil, Gas, and Mining, Carbon Emery County, for putting this meeting together. I used to attend these meetings when they were in a little one-story building in the middle of town. That was probably 15 years ago, and I'm very happy to see these get reinitiated again. Also, I'm really glad to hear that Carbon and Emery County are embracing things like hydrogen, carbon sequestration, and all of the technologies that Jeremy talked about a few minutes ago. At the Energy and Geoscience Institute, we only work on things that are subsurface. So I'll talk about a few of those things, but they intersect with what Jeremy was talking about very, very well. And also I have to talk about Admiral Rickover was born in 1899, and so I attended a lecture that he gave when I was a senior in college, and he was a little old man at that point in time, but still on active duty as an admiral at 75. Now I think of him as a little old man, and I'm only a few years younger than him at this point in time, so little old man changes with time as we go forward. So also I'd like to put a shout out for what Jeremy talked about with Dr. Andrew Fry coming next month. If anybody can make these complex systems work, it's Andrew. He's phenomenal engineer, phenomenal scientist. So I'd strongly encourage you all to come and visit his talk next time they do this. Okay, on the agenda today, we're going to have two sections here. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Energy and Geoscience Institute, what we do there. In particular, I'm going to talk about Utah Forge, which is a geothermal project we're doing in Milford, Utah. $220 million research project ongoing right now. The biggest geothermal science project in the world is in Milford. Pretty remarkable that that's there. Then the other thing I want to talk about is a workforce development program that's been funded by USHE under the Deep Science Initiative in Utah on our Resilient Energy Certification Program. Then I'm going to turn the time over to Dr. Eric Edelman, and he'll talk about a lot of the things we're doing as far as Carbon Science Initiative on carbon sequestration. I'm glad you guys are embracing those things. Okay, just a few things about the Energy and Geoscience Institute. We have about 50 engineers, scientists, and lab technicians working at the University of Utah to look at the newest renewable energy topics. And again, we predominantly work subsurface. So there's a lot of geologists, and myself, I'm a petroleum engineer, and I'm using my skills and techniques as well as other petroleum engineers to look at things like such as geothermal energy and carbon sequestration. Those skills are perfectly transferable. We specialize in geoscience for exploration and production, and our roots are in oil and gas and geothermal. Since then, we've branched into other advancements. We do a lot of high temperature, high pressure drilling. In fact, in the geothermal project in Milford, we're drilling at about 400 degrees Fahrenheit. into solid granite. So it's quite an undertaking. A lot of carbon science, and I'll let Eric talk about that. And we are also bridging into things like smart grid and power grid management. Now on the bottom there, I've got 3 logos there. One's on geothermal, so that's really one of the things we work on. The center one is on energy fluids. That's our energy fluids and critical minerals. So we're working on oil and gas, and also looking at the critical minerals that come out of the brines, and what other things you can do with those brines and the energy that comes out with those brines. And then the third area is carbon management, and Dr. Edelman will talk about that. So I'd like to talk just briefly about Utah Forge. And for that, I'm going to walk over here and use my pointer. So Utah Forge is a project that's being done in Milford, sponsored by the Department of Energy. Dr. Joe Moore and Dr. John McClendon are the co-PIs on that project, and they're doing they are world-class scientists and world-class engineers. It was originally funded, it's funded through 2027, and we're looking to continue on until 2035. As I said, $220 million DOE project, and at this point in time, we have 7 wells drilled. 2 of those are for production and withdrawal of energy. If you look at this, If you look at this diagram here, the first well was drilled in 2022, and that's our injection well, and that well was drilled to 10,000 feet total length, 8,500 feet true vertical depth, into 225 degrees Fahrenheit or 220 degrees centigrade or 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Most things don't work at 400 degrees Fahrenheit. We did find that the drill bit works, but all the electronics and all the monitoring systems didn't, So the drill bit worked great, and we had to infer a whole lot of things after that. Fortunately, we had 5 other wells there, and we did microseismic, so we could steer that drill bit by triangulating the location of the microseismic returns that we had coming back. So we knew exactly where that drill bit was. Yes, sir? You okay with questions? Well, I guess so, if I want, need clarification, sure.
I'm just curious if it's porous enough?
There's no porosity.
Or do you have to frack or something to?
Yeah, I'll get to that, yeah.
Cool.
0 porosity in this solid granite, and 0 fluids there too. So it's almost no porosity, no permeability, none of that. Then we drilled the second well, which is the production well. So what we will be doing is we will be injecting cold water using some of the same thermodynamic cycles that Jeremy talked about. We'll be injecting cold water down the production well, and in withdrawal well, we'll be taking the hot fluid out after Mother Nature warms it up and turns it back into steam once we get to the surface. So the production well was completed in 2023. We completed the stimulation in 2024. We're going to go back, and this red well, we're going to do 9 stimulations on that well to interconnect the fractures that we created when we fracked the injection well. And so we've already connected those, and we have connectivity between the 2 wells, and now we're going to go in and frack the granite and improve the permeability, and so that we can extract the heat, improve the surface area so that that well can be productive. Now, this is all being done on Sitla land, which is a great advantage for us. Now, all the land around it has been leased up by other geothermal companies, and they are in the process of replicating what we've done there on a commercial side. You may have seen that Fervo is engaged in a contract with Google to provide all the energy for their data plants, and part of that is going to come from right here in Milford, Utah. I think this is my only slide on forage. So I'd like to see if there are any questions about forage at this point in time. Yes, sir. We don't, okay. We're doing the science. Okay, the question was, what's the output? We are doing the science. We're doing the rock mechanics, the drilling, the steering the bit, the stimulation, and then we're gonna do the fluid flows. Then we are gonna turn that science and that data over to industry, and they're gonna be the ones that determine what the output is. So we don't know yet. We're just trying to prove that we can drill through solid granite at 400 degrees Fahrenheit, fracture, stimulate it, and then move fluid through those. Okay, great question though. Well, Fervo will know pretty soon because they're drilling right next door. Okay, thank you. All right. My other slide I wanted to talk about is workforce development. Jeremy talked a lot about workforce development and training that's planned for down here. We're in the process, and we are in our second semester of our Resilient Energy Certification program. Last semester, we taught courses in alternative energy by Dr. Bobby Mohanty. We taught energy management by Dr. Masood Parvanya. And we also taught a geoscience, which is a modification of our petroleum geology program. Those 3 courses were taught last semester. And what we're doing is these courses are technical electives for graduate students at this point in time. The courses that started yesterday, and I attended both courses, we're doing an energy entrepreneurship, society and policy course. Engineers need to understand these things. It's a less technical course and less rigorous, but nonetheless, engineers need to understand policy. And we're also doing a carbon sequestration project by Dr. Brian McPherson. These courses started yesterday, and all of these courses, I said, are technical electives for graduate students. We are going to retool these courses so that the whole workforce throughout the energy sector can benefit from taking these courses. So they're going to be retailored so that if a pumper is interested in learning about carbon sequestration, he can attend those lectures. It's going to be modularized, so if they only want to learn about one aspect, such as microseismic, then they can take the module on microseismic. So these are going to be rolled out in the fall of 2024 for consumption by everybody. Any questions on that? Because I'm going to turn the time over to Dr. Eric Edelman here. But I'll introduce Eric because I first met Eric probably about 10 years ago. He was a lab rat working for a company called TerraTech, and I convinced him to take the Masters of Science in Petroleum Engineering program, which he did from Saudi Arabia as he was working for Schlumberger over in Saudi Arabia. He came back to the States after that. Dr. Brian McPherson talked him into continuing his education. He's now a PhD, and he is one of our principal investigators on Carbon Science Initiative. So I'm going to turn the time over to him to talk about what's going on near you and what can move into carbon in Emery County. So, Eric.
Thanks, Al. Very flattering. It's been a journey. Academically, it's one of those things where when I started schooling, I never would have thought I'd stay in school forever. I don't know if I'd recommend it to everyone, but it's been a great experience, especially at the University of Utah. I did my undergrad at BYU in civil engineering, but worked at Schlumberger with rocks. And one of the things that all of this comes back to, and I love being here, it's the rocks. It's the coal, it's the rocks in the area. The research that I've performed specifically used Navajo sandstone from the Buckskin Wash just south of here. Spend a lot of time with my family down in the San Rafael Swell area. And I mean, you have a beautiful facility. When I walk out and look out at the mountains, my mom's family settled on the other side of the mountain range in Mount Pleasant. So this is home. Not only that, but a lot of the information's been very helpful, especially hearing Jeremy present. There's a lot of overlap in many of these. There's a lot of opportunity in the area specifically associated with energy. How is energy generated? How can we utilize the local resources, whether it's the coal, whether it's the extraction of brine, the derivation of critical minerals. There are a lot of opportunities in the area. So the group that I work in, I need to be done in 10 minutes. Is that what I have? All right, well, you're gonna get a crash course on the local projects, and I'm gonna do this in 10 minutes. So I'm happy to come back, but my group specifically works in carbon sequestration and then with hydrocarbon extraction. So I will jump forward because you see all of them. The project that's most relevant in the area, it's the Paradox Basin project. So the Paradox Basin extends from let's see if I can do this right. Here we go, right there. Highway 70 cuts across the northern extent of the Paradox Basin. Paradox Basin then extends through Moab would be right here, and then Blanding down south. So from north to south, it's a rather extensive. It's one of the largest production areas in the state from a density standpoint, not necessarily total volume, but highly productive wells, specifically outside of Moab. But the general extent of the basin is not really well known or developed. Now, when you think Paradox, it's one of those unknowns, one of the uncertainties that we have. And the biggest paradox associated with this reservoir is what can we do to improve the production? Now, one of the problems that the Paradox faces is that there are 29 cycles of salt. When we think of salt, we often look at what's on the table, this granular material. However, salt, it's plastic. If you heat it, it deforms, but it stays together. It has no permeability and it inhibits the ability of fluids to travel through it. So it has good containment. So when hydrocarbons are generated in the subsurface, it's great because it prevents them from exiting. So oil and gas doesn't just come out to the surface, they're trapped by these salt layers. But with that benefit of the salt, we also have the downside of the salt migrates. If we expose it to water, it mobilizes and it will travel to our wells. So in this project, one of the biggest issues we've experienced is the salt that bounds this Cane Creek member that we're producing from. It's been migrating into our wells. So we've been working to reduce those issues. Another issue that occurs with stress in the subsurface. If I gave someone here a 45-pound weight, many of you guys look pretty strong, I'm pretty weak, but you'd see a comparison of if they were to hold it over their head, how long can they hold it for? So one of the attributes of rock or materials in general, it's called fatigue. So with time, I'm gonna weaken, I'm gonna lower, I'm gonna compress. Rocks do the same thing. Salt is very weak. Salt deforms plastically, and with time, it will deform. So in one of the wells that was recently drilled this past year, we had issues with salt creep in the wellbore. It added complexity to the drilling where the bit was being stuck, the pipe was having issues. We had to re-drill that well twice. And in the end, it's an overpressure. These seals are so good that the reservoir contains the hydrocarbons, but they're pressurized so high that there are issues that occur with keeping the well stable. So that well is actually, we're in the process of re-drilling. Now, it's an $11 million project total, $8 million funded by the federal government, $3 million brought in cost share or expenditures associated with science to the project where we've been drilling these wells. Here you can see a salt vein that's migrated. So these fractures in the subsurface, the salt naturally flows and collects. It naturally flows into the wellbore. So we're currently developing methodology and implementation tools to keep the salt in solution and being produced as we're producing oil and gas from these wells. Beautiful pictures. Sorry, 1 second. There we go. Wrong button. Let's go back. Beautiful pictures of the reservoir. You can see the wellbore trajectory. You can see the pilot hole or the characterization well that was drilled that brought us out rock samples. So in my lab on campus, we take these rock samples, we characterize them, how fluids flow, the type of oil and gas that might be present, and the type of rock strength that they might have. This is an overlay of the wells. Specifically, Kirkwood owns the wells here. You can see the production in 500,000 to 1.2 million barrels of oil cumulatively produced outside of Moab. Moab would be in this area. The wells we're working are in this northern Gunnison Valley area. And then the extent, the par 5, we were hoping to get down to that area in the project. However, we have not. high-level overview. So what the struggles we're dealing with, wellbore optimization. We're trying to reduce and have greater success with drilling these wells. So this new well that's being re-drilled in the next 3 months, we're going to take the learnings that occurred with the well that we had wellbore issues or it had sidetracking problems to re-drill that well. We're analyzing the stress because one of the issues we've observed is the production of the hydrocarbons. If we drill into the minimum stress orientation or utilize localized pressure zones, we see higher production in these wells. In this image, I apologize, this is a strong crash course in geophysics, but you can see these faults that occur. These are isolations. They're fractures that occur within the subsurface that we're evaluating. And then here's what a salt sample looks like. It's solid, but if you were to hold it, you apply temperature and put weight on it, it will deform like plastic. Okay, 5 minutes. Let's learn about carbon sequestration in 5 minutes. The federal government has a project that's this cusp. It's a regional partnership that between the western states, University of Utah, we've led substantial amount of this work, and then a lot of the groups out of New Mexico looking at carbon sequestration. Now, carbon sequestration is somewhat of a cost center. What are you going to do with the carbon? Right now, at the moment, the federal government incentivizes capturing, whether it's a coal power plant, whether it's an iron facility, or fertilizer plant, capturing that CO2 instead of releasing it to the atmosphere. So there are financial incentives specifically associated with this 45Q legislation where $60 per ton for CO2 that's used for producing additional hydrocarbons, that the CO2 is sequestered into the subsurface, stored in the subsurface, and up to $85 per ton in a saline aquifer. Now, Jeremy mentioned the extraction of brine. This is an opportunity I see in the area, would be if we were to capture CO2 specifically at any point sources. In the past, we've worked with Hunter and Huntington plants, but if any of these other projects come online that generate CO2, we could potentially inject the CO2 into some of these brine aquifers, extract the brine, and then take these minerals away. But how is this relevant, or how does this work? So we have a point source, i.e. a power plant. We capture it, we contain it within a vessel, we pipe it to a location. You can see a well derrick here, but we inject. We inject ideally into a saline aquifer where this brine material would be displaced and potentially either extracted to the surface and utilized for the minerals, or it would pressurize that area. The other option is to inject into an area like Buzzard's Bench or Drunkard's Wash, ideally in a supercritical state. They're monitoring methodologies, so CO2 monitoring, risk assessments as we do elevate that pore pressure, making sure that we do not induce any seismicity, and then reservoir simulation work is done. Now, what projects? Well, here we go. So relevance to the area. So right here, this area that's the darkest blue, basically, that's where we're at. Drunkard's Wash, Buzzard's Bench are the irregular shapes. The circles are point sources, should be different colors, of CO2 emissions in the state. Hunter and Huntington actually are two of the largest. We are working on a project I'll talk about in a brief second at Bonanza Power Plant outside the Uinta Basin. But you can see an overlay of known or anticipated CO2 storage. So the different colors, this light blue to dark blue, what that is potential storage capacity. How much volume of CO2 could we capture from emission locations and put into the subsurface? The Navajo sandstone, specifically in this region, is a beautiful sandstone rock, has lots of porosity, good permeability, good containment, and it's my favorite target or potential storage location. All right, so the evolution of these CUSP projects, these federal groups that work together, right now we're in 2024. So there's capture technology that's been developed. We deal with the subsurface storage side. And so we've been working to characterize in the country where can we store. Specifically in the state, this project in the Uinta Basin. So the Uinta Basin has a lot of oil and gas wells that are present. This is the Bonanza Power Plant right here on the left. I apologize for all of you guys. I'm not shining over here. Bonanza Power Plant, that way. All right, so the proposed site of characterization sits on the Sitla location, Sitla site, working with the state, federal lands, to characterize potential storage. Now, what's unique in the Uinta Basin is there's the option for stack storage, similar to the Navajo sandstone here locally. There's the Entrada, the Dakota, Entrada, and Weber that are the same type of rock that provides good capacity for putting the CO2 in. The last project is we're working in outside of Cedar City with an iron mine, iron refining location to characterize for potentially capturing CO2 as they generate the iron and then sequestering it right there close by. So it's actually the Navajo sandstone in southwestern Utah too. So it's a good rock that's present in the state. It's good storage. But we're working with players. We're always trying to find industrial partners to work with that are interested in utilizing these 45Q tax credits and potentially sequestering and hopefully putting together kind of a loop in producing the brine and finding an opportunity there. So that's 1135. Any questions? Really easy stuff, no problem. We're good to go. Silence. Sorry if that didn't hit anything, but if anybody has any questions, we're happy to talk. We'd be happy to come back down and give a more in-depth discussion, talk about the process for carbon sequestration. It's an easy trip down here. It's a great reason to come visit. I'd prefer to put it on a Friday so then I could spend the weekend down here. So, yeah.
One more try. There we go. I switched speakers on the AV crew. Our last presentation of the day will be by Chris Hall with the UDOT. Chris attended SUU, way to go T-Birds, and he started working for UDOT in 2008. I was actually showing the agenda just recently to some folks, and they were looking over it and they seen Chris Hall's name on the agenda and they said, oh, he's really good. So no pressure, Chris, but take us away to lunch.
So thank you. So my presentation is a little bit different because I'm going over a lot of information that's really hard to put into slides. So I'm going to be jumping back and forth between my presentation and some websites to kind of show you where this information is. So just quick, I was asked to kind of say, what is UDOT doing in the area in transportation in Carbon and Emery counties? So I wanted to kind of cover a couple of different processes that we have and an overview of what I'm going to be going over. So we have some studies that we're doing and they're planning studies. So we're trying to look out in advance to say what is needed in transportation in the two counties. What are some of the spotlights or areas that we see issues with, or that we're going to see issues with in the future, whether it's for most of the time when we look at these things, it's capacity related, just the amount of vehicles. We know that there's a lot of safety concerns in the area, and those are usually brought up as needed basis because they can change so quickly. So when we're looking out at the future, we're trying to accomplish all of that things, but a lot of it's basically generated through the capacity or the ability to handle the traffic on the roads. So we have current and funded projects that we're doing that I'll go over real quickly, ones that we have. Then we have pavement preservation. So we have a saying at UDOT that good roads cost less. So we try really hard to make sure we keep up on our pavement management to make sure the roads are in good condition so they don't deteriorate to the point where they're really hard to fix. So there's quite a few projects. We do like a 3 to 4 year plan program for those of what we're doing. They can vary a little bit depending on funding, but I'll show you those real quick. I'm going to have to hit those pretty quick because I don't have a lot of time. But if there's any more questions on a lot of this stuff, you can get with me after, and I can give you more information. And also, we can share these slides with you. They have links to where all this information is contained as well. And then we have our long-range plan, which covers the entire state. It's the unified plan of the long-range plan, where we're looking at capacity needs for the entire state. So I wanted to hit that and show you where you can find any information if you want more than what I'm presenting here today. So our first one is that I wanted to hit is we're currently working with Carbon County as an emerging area study. We're working with the local governments, and it's something I've identified throughout the state as emerging areas of places where we could see significant growth in the next several years of, 15 to 30 years. A lot of these emerging areas where we could see an upwards of 5 to 7% growth. And that's why we want to start looking at these areas, because that is so much growth that it's hard to handle. And that's why we're doing these emerging area studies to say, if this growth does come to fruition, what are some of the strategies to help make sure we stay ahead of all of the things, whether infrastructure, transportation. And this Carbon County Emerging Area Study, I don't have much time, so I'm not going to click on that and go to that, but I wanted you to be aware that we are coordinating with Carbon County to do this study. This is a study we just completed not too long ago. It's the US 6 Helper Access Management Study. It kind of came about of how is the US 6 going to be accessed in the future through Helper and Carbon County, and also just kind of the safety of the corridor. So I'm going to click on this real quick and take me to a link. So there's a lot of information contained in this. This is housed in a ArcGIS story map on our servers. You can go to UDOT's website and just search for, or UPlan and search for US 6 corridor study, and it should be able to pull up for you, but I can get links if anybody wants to find out more. But I want to kind of go through this area. We identify the study area. We look at goals and objectives of what we want to accomplish, of saying, what do we want to see for the future of this transportation corridor? We look at a lot of the safety consideration and capacity. The vision statement is improve safety and mobility for local, regional, and freight travel through the corridor, access management while considering local access needs. So it's one of those things that we have a lot to consider on state highways. We want to make sure we're considering everything. And to kind of get down through it, you can see what we're projecting on US 6 of vehicles per day. That's an average over the year of vehicles per day that we're looking at, that, we're starting to see a lot more traffic. And once you get up into that 14,000, 15,000 range, those two-lane roads are starting to see a lot of congestion, and that's where we see, it might be time to look at widening or adding additional capacity. So into the future, there is going to be more capacity needs on US 6, and it's something that we've got to take into account and plan for those projects. A lot of safety data here that we're going to skip through. I kind of want to get to the highlights, and the purpose of this study is to say, here, what are some proposed options that will meet all the goals that we previously identified of improving safety and making sure that the access is there for the locals, and also provide that throughput for the freight and the other people driving through the county. So we went through, and I want to highlight it, that the output of it came to the point where it's like, once you get to a certain capacity or so many cars on the road, those left turn movements become a big safety issue, as you're starting to see already. We've got a lot of comments, we're starting to see that. So the outcomes of some of these are median barrier or restricting left turn movements to specific intersections where we have improvements to help minimize safety concerns. One of the options, we're putting some roundabouts at some key intersections, because when we have a higher speed road like we do on US 6 and we put signal lights in, there's a potential for serious and fatal accidents, because if people do run a red light going that fast, it has devastating consequences. So we want to try and avoid signals if possible because of the safety aspect of them. They do function well, but until somebody doesn't pay attention to run a red light, and then it causes these issues. We did look at traffic signals to say, what are the costs, what are the implications, and we looked at a lot of different things. And then we also looked at grade separated interchanges. So similar to what Helper has right there for Main Street, we looked at what if we did that in other locations. It really came down to kind of a cost-benefit scenario, and some of these other solutions were a lot cheaper but provided similar access and safety benefits as the grade separation. So we're going to probably plan on moving forward to some of these other ideas, whether it's a roundabout or a different intersection type. None of this is set in stone. I know we presented this in the county before, and there was a lot of concerned citizens and a lot of worry about it. This isn't set. We're not going to do this. This is a study of, here's some ideas of what we could do in the future. As we get closer, as the capacity of the traffic increases, we have more cars on the road, as we start seeing more of these serious or crashes on our road, we'll start identifying funding to say, what do we need to do we'll look into it a little bit more, but this gives us an idea of what we will be looking at in the future to solve some of these future problems. So, and I'm welcome to take any questions now because I want to make sure I'm giving you the information you guys want. So if you have anything, just interrupt, and if you want any questions, just let me know, just jump in. So that kind of is the highlight of what this helper study was, is just saying there's different options here. Here's what we're going to look at to try and improve that. Oh. So we also did a Uinta Basin freight study, so kind of that connection corridor for US 191. I'm not going to jump into this one because we've got 2 funded projects out of it that we'll be able to talk more about in the next slide. But anyways, it has a lot of different information there. If you want more about what we looked at on that corridor, all that information is there. Sorry. All right. So now we're moving into some funded projects. This project is funded. It's intersection improvements at US 6 and 191. I don't know how well you can see it. It's a signalized high T. So essentially, we're going to put a signal there to create gaps for people on 191 making left turns onto US 6, so they can make that left turn safely. Well, if you're coming down Canyon, there won't be a signal. You'll just be able to keep going straight. So only if you're going north on US 6 is where you may have to stop, or coming down 191. It's currently funded at $5 million, and its construction is planned for the summer of 2024, so this summer. So it's currently in design. We're planning to construct it this year. So this is another project that we've got funded. It's south of the summit on US 191. Design for this coming year, construction anticipated 2025. ITS, which is kind of our fiber optics, which allows communication and other aspects there. Intersection improvements at Emma Park Road. Pavement preservation, so we're going to be adding more asphalt to handle the additional freight traffic that we're seeing on the corridor. And shoulder widening and runaway truck ramps to increase the safety on the road there. And this is just kind of high-level overview right here. If you have more questions, you can answer them, or I can answer them after. Sorry. So then we have another one north of the summit, which is not in Carbon County, but I figured it may be of particular interest to this group because it's kind of that same corridor. It's similar things that we're doing. We're doing some cattle guard, wildlife improvements, passing lane, turning lanes, intersection improvements at US 40. So those are 2 projects we have funded on that route. Some of the other projects we currently have funded: 9 Mile Canyon Road. That one's not strictly UDOT's. It was Joint Highway Committee funding, so we kind of are involved with it, but I believe that the county is managing that one. Jurassic National Monument, it's a Federal Lands Access Program grant, and I couldn't find any more information on that. The federal government usually manages those projects, but it is somewhere in that process of it's a $5 million project to, I believe, pave some roads up there to provide better access. And Fairground Roads, once again, it's a Joint Highway Committee, so we're involved a little bit with the funding, but the county or local government is doing the design and construction on that. But those are some of the major projects in the area that UDOT is involved with funding. So here's a kind of just an overview of the pavement preservation projects. So per year, we've got so many millions. 2024, we've got 4 million or 4 projects. Then 2025, 38 million and 7 projects. 2026, 18 million with 5 projects. In 2027, 23 million in 12 projects through the 2 counties. So there's a lot of investment in keeping these roads in good condition to make sure that they're usable and provide the transportation needs for the counties. Really quick, this is just kind of the projects listed, and I don't know if you wanted me to go slow through here or not. I'm not sure how much time. Do I got 10 minutes left? About 10 minutes, so probably have some time. So here's the information if you want to find out more about it. So this is the 2025 projects. A lot of them are chip seals, overlay of asphalt to preserve the roadway. 2026 through there. Right here? Yep. So as we have quite a few of these projects planned. And like I said, sometimes these vary as we find needs, as you know, because if you're looking out 3 years, sometimes some of these needs change a little bit over those years. But this is kind of the effort that we plan on putting in here to Carbon and Emery County. Then we have the rural long-range plan, and I kind of want to go over this process to let you know that we put a lot of effort into it, that we just updated this rural long-range plan, and it looks out 30 years to say what do we see the need and capacity for transportation is. We reach out to a lot of local governments. We have a lot of surveys and public comment for anybody from the public to provide input to us. And then we look at our funding forecast, and that's the hard part, is we have a lot of comments and a lot of ideas for projects to say we would love to get to these, but then we have to constrain it to say this is how much money we think we're going to get for transportation, split it up over the entire state, and then say this is what we have to spend in different areas. And then we constrain these projects by that funding that we're estimating we may get, and it's a estimation because we're looking out 30 years in some of these things, so who knows what the funding will look like, what our needs will be, how things change. But this is giving us a snapshot to say, if things continue the way we think we are, here's what it's going to be. Just a quick note here, we break it out into different phases. So the phase 1 is from now until 2032. Phase 2 is from 2033 to 2042, and phase 3 is to 2043 to 2050. And then we also keep a list of unfunded projects, of projects that we think are needed and have a potential for it to be needed, but we don't have a way to fund them. And we keep that list there so we know that it's like, it also informs of, here's what we think we need in transportation that would be ideal, but we don't have the funding for it, so we'll you know, the funded projects are the ones that we feel are more critical, but at the same time, as we go through these plans every 4 years and update them, sometimes they switch back and forth. Some of the ones from the different phases will go to the unfunded because we have different data that shows the needs are higher from some of those other phases. So they kind of shift around as we get better data on the different projects. So this is our transportation, long-range transportation plan website. So it has tons of information on it. So I'm going to click here to go to the link, and then the two places that, if you want more information, the best way to go to is right here. There's a rural project app and a rural project list. And so you can click on the list, and this will provide you a slightly filterable list of what projects are on that plan. So you can filter by the different UDOT regions, or we have highway, active transportation, and transit. So you can look at through the different ones. Oh, I'm not used to this mouse, sorry. And then counties. So you can come through here and say, I only want to look at certain counties. So we want, oh, where's Carbon? Oh, I did excludes, no wonder why. All right. So there's a couple of them, so you can click the Carbon and Emery, Carbon. And that gives you this, because when they cross boundary lines, we put them in there. So this right here will give you that list of, here's all the list of the projects in the long-range plan in the two counties. So we've got several in phase 2. We know that there's some of these that we're seeing that we're probably going to need a capacity need to do those sooner, but we just don't have the funding. So we kind of have a need of when ideally we'd like to see it, but we don't have the money. And then we also have a bunch of these unfunded. And as you see, I've already went over, we've got a list of the funded projects on here too. The intersection improvements there is listed as funded. And then a bunch of these are unfunded of we just don't have the money. So we've got a comprehensive list of some of these transportation projects that we'd like to get to, but it also gives you an idea of, yes, we're looking at all these things, but yeah, they may be out 10 or 20 years before we anticipate funding being able to cover those needs. All right, and then just to quickly show you the rural projects app too. So this is just a map, so if it's easier to look at it in a map form, you can come in here and how do you scroll or zoom in? I'm not used to this mouse. All right. Well, anyways, if I had a different mouse, you can click on here to say what mode you want to look at, different phases, and you can zoom in. Once again, this is a statewide plan that we look at. You can look at any projects anywhere, but you can also zoom into the areas you're looking at to say, here's what the boundaries of what those projects are and what they entail. Oh, yeah, so I already hit those. And that was kind of the main parts of my presentation. I wanted to make sure I left it open for any questions. If anybody had any questions or concerns, you can ask them now. If you want any more information on stuff that I covered, I know I went over a lot of this stuff pretty quickly.
Just for clarification on the Jurassic Monument Road, Emery County had stepped away from that project on the Jurassic Monument Road.
Okay.
Just to clarify that. So.
Thank you for the update. Okay. Anything else? Like that, I ended on time. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. So we're to the point of the meeting now where we want kind of a collaborative approach, announcements, questions, things of that nature. I know Jade Powell has a couple items he wants to get us started out with, so please, if you have things, bring them forward. So Jade, let's have you get us started out.
Oh, you just want me to stand? No podium now. So I just wanted to just bring a couple things to everyone's attention. There's four exciting things happening in Carbon and Emery County that all that are benefit the energy community, energy industry, and all of us as citizens here in Carbon and Emery counties. First, I just want to state Wyoming created what's called an interagency working group. It's federally. It's pushed out by the federal government, and essentially what it is it has different state entities, federal entities, and local entities together strategizing on going after a bunch of different federal funding. And so this has been highly successful in Wyoming with a woman that was hired. Her name's Drew Bauer, and she helped establish the interagency working group, the IWG, in Wyoming. Emery Telecom has graciously donated the fees to hire Drew Bauer for our region, for Carbon and Emery counties, and we are putting together to start an IWG here in Utah to identify federal funding and what opportunities we can go after to help different projects such as that you've heard today, the Research Center, UDOT, and others progress. We're already seeing many of these funding opportunities to help establish these projects, and we're hopeful that we'll see some success from that. The second thing is there is a need to hire a grant writer in southeastern Utah. This is something that the AOG CERTA has been passionate about, and it's something that Carbon and Emery counties, as well as some private companies, have been passionate about as well. So as the IWG identifies the funding sources, now we need the person that will go after them. And so with that, we have, here at the AOG, we've committed some funds that we've received to hire the grant writer, as well as Pacific Corp. They've identified and have committed $30,000 to hire a grant writer, as well as Carbon County has committed some funds, and also there's a proposal from the Emery County Economic Opportunity Board, the CEO board, to fund a grant writer for $50,000 for that position. And so we're working through all that. As well as we have, through Congressman Curtis's office, we're hopeful to secure some other funds. So we will be hiring a grant writer probably in the next couple months to identify these projects, to work on these projects, and to apply for them. The last thing is, with Utah State, USU Eastern, Utah State University Eastern, the campus here in Price, there's legislation happening this year from Representative Christine Watkins and Senator David Hinkins to help bring even more opportunities here. So President Cantwell, the president of USU, came down. She toured the Santa Fe LNG Research Center, And she saw the great need of energy engineering as well as energy entrepreneurs in our area. And so with the help of Representative Watkins and Senator Hinkins, they will be proposing receiving more funding so that we can, I think Kent's turning off our lights. He wants me done. He's like, you're done. And so USU's seeking funding from the legislature to add professors in campus on Price to stand up the energy engineering program as well as an energy entrepreneur focus. And so those are, and then last, we do have a group between local stakeholders here in Carbon-Emery County that do meet monthly to discuss economic opportunities that these two counties and cities could have, and a lot of it involves a lot of your industry, so that we can help kind of navigate this transition that we're going through. So with that, I just wanted to make sure, just kind of end with 4 exciting things that are moving forward in our region.
Thank you, Jade. Other comments or announcements that we have?
Okay, good. Thanks, Jade, for that. If you're working on a project that involves carbon sequestration, mineral extraction, or something subsurface that the Energy and Geoscience Institute is involved in, come to us. We will write the grant. We will need your help. We'll need support letters and stuff like that. But guys like Dr. Eric Edelman, that's what they do for a living. And the more they kill, the more they eat.
It's not true. I don't eat more, but I keep jobs.
Okay, other announcements?
When Jade was talking about those grants, it reminded me that UDOT has a grant coordinator, so if you are looking to go after any grants for our federal grants for transportation, it's something that we can help with. We can review grants, we can provide some insight and some best practices for those transportation grants. So if you find a grant that you want to go after, reach out to us and we can provide some support.
Okay, others? Okay, I'm going to end us with a couple of thank yous. First to Southeastern Regional Development Agency, Jade and his group, for making this facility available to us, helping us get all the logistics, so I really appreciate that. Thank you to all of you for coming, and per Kent's prompting with the lights being shut off, it's time for lunch. So if you see speakers as you're eating your lunch, please take a moment and thank them for coming and presenting to us today. We baited them into this, telling them what we'd provide them lunch. They didn't know that we were providing it to everybody. So just give them a thank you. It goes a long way. They volunteered their time. Okay, thank you.